After 10 days of breaking up, this girl finally mustered enough courage to click on her ex-boyfriend's social media account. Seeing his happy smile, Yumi's heart froze, and she sat crying in loneliness. From that day on, Yumi tried to lift her spirits. She tried to work hard so she wouldn't remember her ex-boyfriend. Returning home, she packed up all the items related to him and threw them all away. Sweet memories, like a movie, flashed through her mind. They had once been so happy, matching shirts they wore together. The keyboard Ku-ung gave her every item seemed to be proof of that sweetness. Until she saw the shirt Ku-ung gave her, Yumi suddenly felt weak. She hugged it, heartbroken, and cried. Just then, Yumi received a call from a colleague. There was a project revision plan she needed to review. Yumi waited for Bobby downstairs for a very long time. Just as she was about to call him, Bobby finally arrived. He handed her the project plan and told her to do her best. Yumi felt confused, but Bobby's words comforted her wounded heart. Yumi slowly returned to her normal life. She accidentally discovered that Bobby shared the same hobby as her. Both liked reading romance novels. Bobby recommended a romance novel that perfectly suited her taste. In just one night, she finished reading it. The next morning, she returned the book to Bobby, and also thoughtfully gave him a chocolate bar. From then on, the good feelings between the two grew stronger. While Yumi was making coffee and swaying to music, Bobby appeared. Seeing he seemed curious about what she was listening to, Yumi handed one earbud to Bobby. Unexpectedly, their musical tastes were also identical. Bobby's score and Yumi's heart increased. He introduced her to his favorite song, but it turned out Yumi was helping her colleague Ruby learn about Bobby's preferences. One day, Bobby proactively invited her to go see a play together. Seeing Bobby's charming face, Yumi was completely captivated. She obediently went with Bobby to the park to watch the play. But this awkward relationship made her feel unnatural. Seeing this, Bobby took off his jacket and placed it over Yumi's legs. These small actions were gradually breaking down her walls. The performance began, and Yumi watched with more joy and focus than usual. She didn't notice Bobby's ardent gaze. The two laughed, talked, and swayed together. They looked truly happy. The performance ended. On their way home, Bobby remembered the first time he met Yumi. He wanted to return the umbrella he had found to her. At that time, her face clearly conveyed two big words: be cautious. It turned out she was a wonderfully bright person. Bobby liked people with cheerful personalities like hers, but foolish Yumi didn't realize what he meant by saying that. Immediately after, before Yumi could even react, Bobby confessed his feelings to her. At this moment, Yumi froze, unsure how to answer. This was her first time being confessed to. Her heart pounded uncontrollably. If she started a new love with Bobby, she could move past the pain of breaking up with Ku-ung. But Yumi was incredibly rational. She was very clear that her feelings for Bobby weren't love, so she coldly refused him. "I'm so sorry." Bobby's heart immediately felt empty. He had greatly anticipated Yumi's answer, but that anticipation ultimately turned into disappointment. Returning home, Yumi also didn't know if she had done the right thing. She didn't want to haphazardly start a new relationship. It turned out the person Bobby secretly loved at the company wasn't Ruby, but Yumi. After being confessed to by Bobby, Yumi became much more confident, but her headache continued. From then on, whenever she met Bobby, she felt very awkward because she had rejected him, and she unconsciously observed his every move. She tried to muster the courage to greet Bobby, but Bobby's attitude was unusually cold. Yumi guessed he was probably hurt after being rejected by her, but just a second later, Bobby was laughing and talking happily with another girl. Seeing this, Yumi felt a little pang of sadness. To ease this relationship, she intentionally helped Bobby carry things, but Bobby unintentionally refused. Yumi fell into a spiral of self-doubt. She thought Bobby had completely moved on from her. As a result, early the next morning when she missed her bus, she suddenly saw Bobby and his ex-girlfriend together. The ex-girlfriend held onto his arm. Then they both got into the car and left. At this moment, Yumi realized that Bobby's coldness towards her yesterday wasn't due to a failed confession at all, but because he had reconciled with his ex-girlfriend and felt awkward around her. Yumi was utterly mortified by her own flirtatiousness. Although she outwardly said it was fine, inwardly, her feelings had gradually changed. Her attitude towards Bobby also took a sharp turn. As Yumi was about to go home, Ruby invited her to dinner. When Yumi arrived, she realized this date was arranged by Bobby. She completely lost interest. Ruby asked him if he had someone he liked yet. Bobby replied yes, but he had been rejected. The colleagues all felt that the girl truly didn't know what was good for her. How could she reject such a good person as Bobby? Yumi listened, her conscience gnawing at her. After the party, Yumi felt awkward having to share a car with Bobby. But not wanting colleagues to suspect anything, she had to grit her teeth and get in. On the way, Yumi was furious, but dared not speak. Bobby wanted to ease the atmosphere, but Yumi didn't bother to engage. He felt he was making Yumi uncomfortable, so Bobby proactively got off the bus. This action by Bobby made Yumi's heart flutter, but she was still angry. Clearly, Bobby was the one who should feel guilty towards her for getting back with his ex-girlfriend. Why was she the one who was as uncomfortable? Yumi texted him, saying he should be the one feeling guilty. At this moment, Bobby finally understood. He immediately called Yumi and explained, quickly catching up with her. Yumi, seeing Bobby, poured out all her emotions. She became increasingly agitated. Bobby calmly thanked her for waiting for him. This statement left Yumi unsure how to respond. Afterwards, the two waited for the bus to go home together. Even though Yumi had rejected Bobby, he still took care of her in their daily work. These small actions continuously broke down her resistance. Yumi began to unconsciously observe Bobby's every move. Just a glance when waiting for the elevator was enough to make Yumi run away in embarrassment. To avoid seeing Bobby, she even intentionally took the stairs, but ultimately still ran into him. At lunchtime, Bobby invited her to eat with him, but Yumi refused, using the excuse that she wasn't finished with work yet. Unexpectedly, Bobby even thoughtfully brought her a portion after he finished eating. These actions of his continuously attacked the wall within her, making her start to pay attention to him. In meetings, she would observe his small habits, seeing how many buttons on his shirt were usually left open. Even if Bobby just walked by, she would guess what perfume he was wearing. After rejecting Bobby, she began to realize she liked him, but she couldn't find an opportunity to express it. Yumi once again returned to her solitary life. Depressed, she would play Bobby's favorite songs even when doing some chores. Yumi would dress up and leave the house to exercise, hoping only to accidentally run into him. But after searching several times, she couldn't find his familiar figure. Just as Yumi was about to give up, she accidentally met Bobby at the supermarket. Yumi's face lit up, but she still tried not to show it. And Bobby was also cooking curry. Their similar tastes once again drew the two closer. Bobby was startled by a spider, and Yumi found him very cute. When they returned home, it suddenly rained. Bobby didn't have an umbrella and could only walk with Yumi. Fearing Yumi would get wet, he kept trying to shield her with the umbrella, leaving his own shoulders soaked. Yumi noticed this, and her heart began to pound wildly. But before she could express herself to Bobby, she learned from Ruby that Bobby was going on a blind date. This news left Yumi disappointed. She heard that the blind date was beautiful, had a stunning figure, and a gentle personality. Yumi didn't participate in the conversation. She didn't want Bobby to go on a blind date, but she herself had decided to be good friends with him. At this moment, she realized how foolish a decision she had made. The next time she met Bobby, Yumi felt a bitter taste in her mouth. She had clearly rejected his confession, but now she wanted him not to go on blind dates anymore, and even wanted to express her feelings to him. Yumi remembered when Bobby broke up with his ex-girlfriend. He didn't hesitate to throw away the ring. Perhaps he had already stopped liking her. On the day Bobby had his blind date, Yumi felt she had no spirit to do anything. Finally, she tossed and turned, falling asleep on the sofa. When she groggily woke up, she received a message from Bobby. It turned out Bobby wanted to return her umbrella. She looked at the sent time, 8:59 a.m. What time was it now? 2:22 a.m. Yumi didn't know what to say. She just let Bobby's message pass her by. She didn't expect him to reply, saying that returning the umbrella tomorrow would be fine. Unexpectedly, Bobby replied immediately after a few minutes, arranging to meet at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning at a cafe. Yumi was incredibly excited. She decided she would seize this opportunity. The next day, Yumi woke up early to put on makeup. She wanted to meet him in her best state. When Bobby saw Yumi, his eyes lit up, and the feeling of his heart pounding strongly returned. Bobby returned Yumi's umbrella. She seized this opportunity to invite him in for coffee, actually wanting to ask about the results of yesterday's blind date. But seeing Bobby constantly checking his phone, she guessed the blind date was very successful, and a sudden disappointment welled up in her heart. She had thought this was the end for her and Bobby. But at this moment, a colleague called, saying Bobby hadn't gone on a blind date last night at all, and today he was continuously texting the other person to apologize. Yumi felt greatly relieved when she heard this news. She decided she would no longer hide her feelings. Yumi ran quickly to Bobby and confessed her feelings to him. This was so unexpected that Bobby was stunned. He never expected such sudden happiness, but his silence made Yumi feel embarrassed. She felt ashamed and quickly ran away. "Can we start right now?" Yumi, with tears in her eyes, turned around. She didn't understand what Bobby meant until he walked over and proactively took her hand. At this moment, the wall within Yumi had collapsed. From then on, the two began to love each other. In front of colleagues, Bobby acted cold and pointed out her mistakes at work, but secretly hid a chocolate bar in a document. When no one was around, they secretly arranged a date location after work. Yumi took Bobby to a super delicious street food stall. But as she was happily ordering, she suddenly stopped. She loved eating the innards at this stall, but Bobby was so clean and gentle. At first glance, he seemed like the type of person who wouldn't like eating offal. This was also their first date, and Yumi wanted to leave a good impression on him. So when Bobby asked leave a good impression on him. She originally intended to say she didn't eat innards, but then she thought that in love one shouldn't hide one's true self. That was the worst thing to do. Bobby said he liked eating pork liver. Yumi never expected Bobby to be so honest. Both eagerly watched the delicious food about to arrive. After eating, they went for coffee together. Perhaps because she had eaten her favorite dish, or perhaps because she had found a like-minded lover, Yumi was in a very cheerful mood today, so she accidentally slipped and fell. In a panic, she placed her hand on his chest. Bobby quickly caught her and hugged Yumi close. As the two looked at each other, both their hearts pounded wildly. It was still early, so Bobby suggested they take a walk in the nearby art village. Bobby, as soon as he got in the car, shared mints with her. Afterwards, Yumi suddenly realized, wasn't this a signal for a kiss? So she quickly crunched the candy. They arrived very quickly, but Yumi still stayed put in the car. Seeing Bobby not doing anything, it turned out she really was overthinking it. But as she unbuckled her seatbelt, Bobby suddenly took her hand. He looked at her intently. When he felt it was enough, he kissed her on the lips. Having had a first time, Bobby also gradually became less shy, and Yumi also strongly reciprocated him. Yumi was doing a face mask when the power suddenly went out. She had no choice but to stay at her boyfriend's house for the night. But ever since getting in the car, she felt his. Israel, you're my R2, wow. She felt his gaze was a little strange. It wasn't until she was in the elevator that she realized she hadn't taken off her mask. Feeling utterly embarrassed, she rushed straight into the restroom as soon as they arrived. Seeing her reflection, she was incredibly mortified. As Yumi was about to get comfortable loungewear to change into, she was scared by what she had brought. She had unexpectedly packed a seductive dress. Yumi had no choice but to shamelessly ask Bobby to borrow some pajamas. As soon as she stepped out, she saw him. Bobby's look as he took off his tie was too handsome. Yumi's heart fluttered. She took the pajamas Bobby offered, intending to put them on, but then realized there was only a top. Could this be some kind of hint? She awkwardly held it up to herself, and finally put it on. The knee-length top still made her feel a little shy. Just then, Bobby brought the pants. Seeing this, Yumi wished there was a hole to crawl into. Bobby was also startled. As soon as she finished changing, Bobby asked if she needed to shower. After saying that, he kept pressing closer. Yumi was cornered, both nervous and flustered. It turned out Bobby just wanted to show her the shower gel and shampoo. Yumi could only laugh to cover her embarrassment. It seemed she had, once again, overthought things. Bobby went to shower, and she waited for him outside, but eventually got too sleepy. Yumi fell asleep on the sofa. Bobby, being considerate, didn't want to wake her. He just turned off the light, covered her with a blanket, and gently placed a pillow under her head. He looked at her with eyes full of love, finally sitting beside her all night. It was a night that was both ordinary and sweet, yet enough to make Yumi happy. The next day, she woke up and saw Bobby still sound asleep. Her love cells felt attacked. When their eyes met, Yumi immediately became shy. Immediately after, Bobby took Yumi to a book library. Yumi loved the atmosphere there. She remembered her old dream when she wished to become an author. Bobby's encouragement reignited her passion for writing. Yumi decisively resigned from her current job, choosing to become an author. Perhaps others felt she was beyond help, but Yumi was always full of hope for the future. Christmas quickly arrived. Yumi needed to prepare a gift for Bobby. Unexpectedly, just then, the landlord called and raised the rent. Yumi's difficulties compounded. After resigning, she was only living on her savings. To buy a gift for Bobby, she decided to sell the rice cooker she didn't use. The tie she intended to buy cost 120,000 won. Unexpectedly, the buyer would only pay 110,000. Yumi was stuck, not wanting to lower the price further, and ultimately couldn't sell it. Yumi had no choice but to go over budget to buy a gift for Bobby. They agreed to spend Christmas at Bobby's house. They agreed to spend Christmas at Bobby's house. As she was texting, Bobby suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It turned out he had been waiting for her early, and fearing she would be cold, he even draped his scarf over her. Although these actions were small, Yumi loved them. Clearly, these were the actions Yumi used to hate most. But now, no matter what Bobby did, she was utterly charmed. They chose a cake together, preparing to go home to celebrate Christmas. But just then, the rice cooker buyer texted, wanting to complete the transaction directly today. Yumi originally intended to refuse, but ultimately had to give in because of money. She told Bobby to go home first, and that she would arrive in half an hour. Yumi ran like the wind home to get the rice cooker, then ran to the agreed meeting place. But she never expected that the haggling customer would be Kuung, her ex-boyfriend. It had been 1 year since they broke up, and Yumi met Kuung again, and on Christmas Day. She never expected the man who used to be so stylish now had to buy a used rice cooker. It was clear Kuung also never expected to meet Yumi in this situation. Kuung felt this was fate. Actually, ever since breaking up with Yumi, he had always regretted it. The reason was that his startup failed. In order for the office to be able to operate the apartment sales business, he ended up not only losing his place of residence but also his office. Whenever he saw couples on the street, he would remember Yumi. But currently, he couldn't even afford a good meal, so what right did he have to bring her happiness? Kuung saw that red bean cakes at the convenience store were on sale, and immediately bought 20 of them. But his house lacked a stove. Then he found a rice cooker online for only 120,000 won, and he immediately contacted the seller. After some haggling, he arranged to meet the seller for direct delivery. Yumi and Kuung looked into each other's eyes across 1 year. This reunion filled Kuung with both joy and anxiety. Yumi was even more surprised. Kuung now seemed to have transformed into a different person. His long hair from before was cut, and his appearance had deteriorated significantly. Kuung had many things he wanted to say to her, but Yumi didn't give him a chance. She decisively handed him the rice cooker. The price they settled on was 115,000 won. Kuung was short on money, but his pride felt as if it had been struck by something. He still gave her 120,000, saying he didn't need the change back, but Yumi insisted on returning 5,000 won to him, as if drawing a clear line. As she placed the money on the rice cooker, Kuung's heart sank. She left immediately after. Watching Yumi's back as she left, Kuung's eyes reddened. He really wanted to chase after her and hug her, but he didn't dare and couldn't. The wind blew away the loose change, and it also chilled his heart. Actually, Yumi wasn't as comfortable as she seemed. On her way home, she kept wondering if Kuung was having difficulties. He looked very run down. She remembered that everything she had sent him before was returned. After searching, she learned that Kuung's office had closed. During those most difficult days, she wasn't by his side. Meanwhile, Bobby was still happily preparing dinner, completely unaware that Yumi's mood was plummeting. Yumi felt she had been too heartless towards Kuung earlier. On a happy day like today, she really should have said, "Merry Christmas." Kuung returned to his company, but remained absent-minded. Finally, he decided to go home first, but unexpectedly received a text message from Yumi, wishing him all the best and a Merry Christmas. This was just a simple greeting, but it ignited a flame of hope in Kuung. This very message gave Kuung more motivation to pursue Yumi. Yumi received a text message. She thought it was from her father, so she asked Bobby to look, but unexpectedly, it was Kuung. Yumi looked at Bobby with a thoughtful, yet ashamed gaze. He was still unaware, preparing dinner by candlelight. On one side was the passionate new love with Bobby, on the other, an old love still filled with regret. Yumi momentarily didn't know what was best to do. She didn't want to hurt Bobby, yet she was afraid Kuung would keep waiting for her in the snow. But Yumi didn't know that Bobby actually knew the message was from Kuung. He intentionally pretended not to know, but in his heart, he hoped Yumi would choose him. In truth, Bobby also had his own selfishness. Not long ago, he accidentally met Kuung, learned that his office had to close and that he was currently living very poorly, but he didn't tell Yumi about this. And when Kuung asked him about Yumi's current situation, Bobby didn't directly say that he and she were together. Finally, Yumi chose to meet Kuung one last time. Although in his heart Bobby wanted to stop her, he could only let her go. Bobby chose to trust Yumi, because as long as he trusted her enough, her ex-boyfriend couldn't do anything. Kuung had always waited for her, waiting until she truly appeared. He was both happy and anxious. This time, he decided to completely abandon his damn pride and speak the words he hid in his heart, but before he could say much, Yumi said, "I have someone else." Then came a blunt, gentle, and cruel blow. Ku-ung didn't know what to do. The alarm in his heart blared, and his whole world collapsed in an instant. At this moment, Ku-ung finally understood that this time Yumi came to meet him to erase the boundary. At this moment, Ku-ung realized how much he had missed out on a good girl. Bobby finished preparing a whole table of food. Just then, the doorbell rang. He ran to open the door. The person he longed for and waited for had returned. He knew Yumi would definitely choose him. The two looked at each other and smiled, spending a sweet and happy Christmas night together. Yumi returned to her daily life. In the morning, she would type at home. At noon, she would go near the company to eat with Bobby. And before saying goodbye, they would share a kiss. This simple yet happy life made Yumi very satisfied. But very quickly, she lost her sense of security. Her long unseen best friend got a promotion and even got to work abroad. Yumi felt jealous. She compared herself to her friend, feeling like a jobless failure. Her best friend learned she wanted to be an author and felt that job was a bit risky at this age. Yumi's self-confidence was hit and her mood plummeted. That evening, while typing, she heard the doorbell ring. When she opened the door, she unexpectedly found Bobby giving her a small pig as a pet. Yumi was delighted. When she woke up, she realized it was just a dream. Dreaming of pigs is a good omen. Yumi felt she would definitely win an award in this competition. She excitedly opened the list, but the result was quite disappointing. She failed again. Learning she had missed out on the award, Bobby bought food to eat with her. Bobby thought she was with her parents, so he quickly tidied up his demeanor. Yumi, seeing this, laughed heartily. After learning Yumi was just joking, Bobby finally sighed in relief. After eating, they kissed passionately, oblivious to everything. The doorbell suddenly rang. Yumi suddenly realized it was her parents. But this time, Bobby didn't believe Yumi anymore, but he didn't expect it to be true. People say that a mother-in-law likes her son-in-law more and more as she looks at him, while a father, more and more as she looks at him, while a father-in-law, of course, is the opposite. Just a moment ago, her father came to bring Yumi seafood, wanting to secretly surprise her, but unexpectedly caught her red-handed with the plum wine and her boyfriend. He stood frozen. His own little cabbage had finally been eaten by a pig. He continuously reminded himself to stay calm, that he was a civilized father, but when he shook Bobby's hand, he still squeezed it tightly. He had to make Bobby understand. Luckily, Yumi's mother arrived in time to intervene. Otherwise, Bobby might have broken his hand. Just one look at Bobby and Yumi's mother liked him. Yumi's mother proactively invited Bobby to stay for dinner, while her father conversely constantly scrutinized him. After returning home, her mother couldn't help but ask about Bobby's family background. With that aura, he must be a rich young master. But Yumi didn't quite believe it. It wasn't until she heard Bobby talking on the phone, saying he didn't want to be the heir, that Yumi started to panic. She remembered the photo of Bobby and his father she had seen before. It really did look like a rich young master. Yumi started overthinking endlessly. To test if he was a rich young master, she decided to use the method of eating yogurt, because rich people don't lick the lid. Yumi cleanly ate all the yogurt without wasting any, while Bobby, without hesitation, threw the lid in trash. Could he really be a rich young master? Bobby said he was still hungry, so he went out to buy food. Yumi, meanwhile, sat dazed like a statue, thinking about the huge distance between her and Bobby. Yumi was troubled. Just then, Bobby bought donuts, but she wasn't in the mood to eat. Bobby told her to look at the name of the bakery, Baby Bakery. It was then that she realized Bobby was the heir to the donut shop. Yumi felt a happiness she had never experienced before. The love she longed for was simply like that. Day by day, Yumi kept failing competitions over and over again, while Bobby was promoted and transferred to work on Jeju Island. Yumi was very scared. She was afraid the distance between them would grow, so she took on another part-time job. After many rejections of her manuscript, Yumi was very disappointed. Perhaps she had no writing talent at all. Not wanting Bobby to worry, Yumi still acted cheerful as usual. To boost her spirits, she went to Jeju Island to find Bobby. But as soon as they met, Bobby realized she wasn't truly happy, so he comforted her. Yumi's spirits sank. Her eyes reddened. In truth, she was very sad and also very tired. But this was the decision she had made. But just at this moment, Yumi received a text message from a publishing house. Because her topic was creative, they decided to publish the book. Happiness came too suddenly. Yumi and Bobby hugged each other joyfully. That evening, they went to the beach to enjoy the breeze. Fireworks in the distance witnessed their happiness. Bobby secretly slipped Yumi's hand into his jacket pocket. When she pulled her hand out, there was a ring on her ring finger. It turned out today was their one-year anniversary. Yumi was touched by his surprise. She also hoped that she and Bobby could be happy forever like this, but complications still arose. Not long ago, she saw a girl get out of Bobby's car. Perhaps it was a woman's sixth sense. She felt danger. She remembered Bobby once telling her that a new intern at the company lived in the same building as him, and since she didn't have a car, he decided to drive her to work. But Yumi never expected the intern Bobby mentioned to be such a beautiful and lovely girl. Just thinking of such a young and beautiful girl by Bobby's side, she felt very uneasy, and this sense of unease filled her heart even more when she saw them laughing and talking together. She couldn't stand her jealousy, so she boldly invited Do-eun to stay and eat grilled meat with them. Do-eun originally wanted to leave, but unexpectedly, the foolish Bobby spoke up, so she stayed. When Bobby left for an errand, the two girls talked to each other. Do-eun's eyes lit up when she mentioned Bobby, and she even praised him for being humorous. The sense of unease in Yumi's heart intensified. When Bobby went to the supermarket to buy groceries, he accidentally ran into Do-eun, who was walking home alone. He kindly lent her his jacket, and Yumi, waiting for Bobby to come home, accidentally saw Do-eun wearing Bobby's jacket. She was truly very jealous. Although she guessed Bobby only lent her the jacket out of kindness, she still felt very uncomfortable. Yumi's worries were not unfounded, because on Bobby's first day of transfer to Jeju, Do-eun had fallen complete. Do-eun had fallen completely for him. From then on, she would secretly watch Bobby. His hard-working demeanor was very handsome. After learning that she and he lived in the same apartment complex, Do-eun proactively greeted him, but Bobby had no impression of her. After learning she was a colleague, he kindly offered her a ride. Do-eun was overjoyed, but she quickly became disappointed, because she knew Bobby had a girlfriend, and they looked very happy. She intended to keep this feeling deep in her heart. As for Yumi, after returning to Seoul, she had successfully signed with the publishing house. Whenever she encountered sadness or difficulties at work, Bobby would buy her some sweets and give her little surprises. Meanwhile, Do-eun, in order to let go of her feelings for Bobby, decided to quit her job and work elsewhere. On the day of farewell, Do-eun couldn't help but speak her heart. Bobby actually understood what Do-eun wanted to say, but he chose to pretend to be foolish. He thought the feelings between him and Yumi were firm enough, but on the day Do-eun left, his heart wavered. A little. Very soon, Christmas came again. Yumi decided to go to Jeju Island with Bobby to celebrate Christmas. But when she arrived, she saw a real estate agent showing a room to clients. At this moment, she learned Bobby had moved. Bobby explained that the place was too far from the company, so he wanted to find another place to live. Yumi felt confused. Bobby had clearly said driving by the sea was very pleasant, but she respected his decision. To give Bobby a surprise, Yumi decorated her house beautifully when she returned home, and even bought a cake. But when she got home, she saw Do-eun standing in front of Bobby's house. After learning that Do-eun had confessed her feelings to Bobby, Yumi's eyes reddened. This love story finally came to an end. Bobby brought fresh flowers home, only to find she wasn't home. He called her, but she didn't answer. He quickly drove around looking for her, finally finding her in a cafe. Yumi frankly asked Bobby the reason for his move. Yumi got her answer from Bobby's silence. Her eyes reddened with heartache. Clearly, they loved each other so much, even celebrated their one-year anniversary together, and told each other about their lives every day. Those memories rushed back to Yumi. She said goodbye. Because of his indecision, Bobby lost Yumi. As the car window lowered, Koo-eung was stunned. He never expected to see his girlfriend, from whom he had broken up 2 years ago, like this. The moment he saw Yumi, an alarm blared in him, because he had never forgotten her. Not long ago, Koo-eung learned that Yumi had become an author. He intentionally put on an indifferent expression in front of his friend, but in the blink of an eye he was seen buying books, even completely clearing out that book from various stores. When Yumi went to the store to observe readers' reactions, she discovered her bookshelf was empty. She was both happy and worried. 2 years ago, Koo-eung's startup failed. His company closed, and he was burdened with debt. To avoid implicating Yumi, he hid the truth and broke up with her. Now, he had successfully become a company owner. Meeting Yumi again, he appeared very radiant. To show her how successful he was now, He even intentionally revealed his expensive watch, and, as if by accident, placed his hand on a luxury car. Yumi couldn't help but secretly smile. Koo-eung was still the same as before, both childish and adorable. It turned out Yumi already knew Koo-eung was very successful now. She had seen him in magazines and also knew that the game he had just released was very popular. Yumi felt genuinely happy for Koo-eung from the bottom of her heart. When saying goodbye to Yumi, Koo-eung's emotions were complex. His heart started to pound rapidly. Yes, he still liked Yumi, but reason told him he had to restrain himself. Because she was very happy now. Christmas 1 year ago, he had wanted to hold on to her, but she said she already had a boyfriend. Koo-eung was unwilling to give up and wanted to know who it was, so he checked her social media account and found out it was Bobby. From then on, he decided he would not interfere with her life. He spent half a year convincing himself to let go of Yumi, determined not to fail just because he met her once. Koo-eung decided to use his busy work to distract himself. The first thing was to replace the illustrator, who also knew Yumi, but he accidentally overheard him saying that Yumi had broken up with her boyfriend a few months ago. Hearing that Yumi was single, the crack in Koo-eung's heart immediately healed. Now he only had one thought in his head: to pursue Yumi again. He created many accounts, leaving comments praising Yumi's new novel. The compliments were soaring, and Yumi read them with pure joy. She received a call from her best friend, who said Bobby had returned from Jeju Island. Because they lived in the same apartment complex, her friend was afraid Yumi would accidentally run into Bobby, so she reminded Yumi beforehand. In the days that followed, Yumi tried to avoid places where Bobby might appear. She didn't dare to go into her favorite bakery, and went to a farther supermarket to buy groceries. Until one day she went to buy coffee. But this cafe was also a place Bobby often visited. Yumi struggled with her thoughts for a very long time. Today she wasn't wearing makeup and was dressed sloppily. But after turning away, she thought it probably wouldn't be that unlucky. Today was also a work day. After thinking this, Yumi confidently walked into the cafe. But while waiting for her drink, she heard a familiar voice. Yumi didn't dare to turn her head. Just then, her coffee was ready. Yumi confidently greeted Bobby, but still subtly kept her distance. Finally, she said hello to him, and left. Just then, Bobby chased after her and called her. He was both straightforward and bold, expressing how much he had missed her. Those happy days were still vivid in his mind. After breaking up with Yumi, his world also plunged into a bleak gray. He had also tried to hold on to her, but it was too late. A step later, when Bobby met Doan again, his attitude was also very cold. After experiencing days without Yumi, he finally returned to the capital. Bobby secretly followed her works, and not wanting to disturb her, he avoided places she might go. But in his heart, he also hoped to meet her, because he had carefully thought about what he would say to her. Seeing his haggard face, Yumi's resilient cells were stirred. She had imagined many times meeting him again, and how she would face him. Bobby hugged Yumi tightly, and her tears also overflowed. Bobby swore he would never make Yumi sad again, but a broken mirror mending is a very difficult thing. In love, reality is always different from wishes. Yumi was still the same as before, putting on beautiful makeup for her date with Bobby, but she no longer seemed to have that sense of anticipation. Even holding hands no longer brought a thrill. She looked at Bobby sitting in front of her, and her heart always felt awkward. Today, when she left home, Yumi took out the ring for their 1-year anniversary. She thought about it for a long time, and finally put it back in the box. Yumi arranged to meet the illustrator, and when she left, she accidentally ran into Koo-eung. No need to think. It must have been arranged by the illustrator friend. Yumi just had to help them act out the play. She wanted to clarify things with Koo-eung, so they went to a cafe together. Koo-eung, unaware, innocently invited Yumi to dinner. But when he heard Yumi was back with Bobby, Koo-eung panicked. He couldn't believe the truth, but ultimately, he reluctantly wished her well. Although Koo-eung was in a very bad mood at this moment, he still wanted to take her home, and Yumi, to avoid awkwardness, refused him. But Koo-eung stubbornly tried to open the car door, and finally hit his hand, falling to the ground. Yumi called Bobby, wanting to reschedule their date, because her friend had a broken bone and had to go to the hospital. When he learned that friend was Koo-eung, Bobby felt more threatened than ever. Although Yumi explained that they met for work, he was still uneasy. Koo-eung didn't want to make Yumi miss her date, and feared her boyfriend would misunderstand, so Koo-eung advised Yumi to go back. But as she was about to leave, she saw Koo-eung's shirt was torn from his fall earlier. She remembered the first time they met. Koo-eung quickly took her, unconscious, to the hospital, and thoughtfully brought her clean clothes. She couldn't bear to let him go home like that, so she went to buy him another shirt. When she left the hospital, she realized she had forgotten her phone. Koo-ung chased after her to return her belongings, and then ran into Bobby in the lobby. So, rivals met. After learning Yumi had gone out without her phone, Bobby immediately reached out, wanting to get it back. At this moment, Koo-ung began to feel indignant on Yumi's behalf. He said Yumi was not easily swayed, not like someone else. Bobby was no fool. He understood what Koo-ung meant. The air between the two was thick with gunpowder. Bobby was no pushover either, so he retorted very sharply, leaving Koo-ung speechless. He felt as if he had been struck by 1,000 arrows, and had fallen to a disadvantage. But even if he lost in love, he would talk about his career. He was a company director, surely not inferior to a lowly team leader. This time, Koo-ung regained his pride, and Bobby's face stiffened. The Cold War flared up. Just then, Yumi arrived. Because she had forgotten her phone, she hadn't bought clothes. Bobby, hearing this, intended to take off his jacket for Koo-ung, but who would wear a rival's jacket? For Koo-ung. But who would wear a rival's jacket? The second argument began. Yumi, wanting to stop them, also told Koo-ung not to say anything more. He watched Yumi and Bobby leave, feeling his mood plummet. Yumi got back with her ex-boyfriend, specifically wearing their one-year anniversary ring to the date, but unexpectedly discovered Bobby had taken off his ring. Not long ago, Yumi always saw him wearing their couple ring. You don't need to feel pressured. Just wear it when you want to. Yumi was very grateful that Bobby understood her, so for this date, she specifically wore the ring, wanting to meet him in a completely new state, but now she felt like a fool. The once sweet atmosphere now became awkward. She immediately changed the subject. It was Bobby's birthday in just 2 weeks, and she planned to go camping in the park with him, but Bobby said he would be on a business trip next week. Yumi was very disappointed. Coming back after the breakup, it felt like an invisible distance existed between them. With added awkwardness, Bobby drove Yumi home and helped her carry her belongings to the door. If it were before, Yumi would definitely ask Bobby to come in and sit for a while. But now she didn't have the courage to say it. Watching Bobby disappear from view, she wondered if her decision was truly right. After returning home, she still took off the ring. The door to her heart closed just like that. On the day Bobby left for his business trip, Yumi set an alarm to see him off. When she woke up, she received a text message from him, saying he was afraid of making noise and disturbing her, so he had already gone to the airport. Yumi called him, but no one answered. During that time, Yumi felt an unnamed disappointment. Every minute she checked if Bobby had replied to her message. Waiting until night, he finally reported he was safe. After quickly talking for a few sentences, he went to sleep. One day, after much difficulty, she finally got a call from Bobby, but he hung up after only a few sentences. In the following days, the text messages became fewer, the words shorter, and there wasn't even a single photo. Yumi started overthinking. Did Bobby regret getting back together? But even so, Yumi still prepared a birthday cake for him, and called him on video that day, wanting to surprise him, but after waiting half the day, he still didn't answer. He texted saying he was at a social event. Yumi had to send a birthday greeting text. Thank you. The short reply made Yumi frustrated, so she decided to go drown her sorrows. But while crossing the street, she saw Bobby, whom she missed day and night. He was sitting in a taxi. She thought she was seeing things. Why was Bobby, who was on a business trip in America, here? It wasn't until the taxi drove away that Yumi seemed to snap awake. She called another car to chase after it, wanting to know why Bobby had to lie, or if he had truly changed. Yumi arrived in front of Bobby's house, but she suddenly wanted to back away. If Bobby was really with someone else, how would she face it? But Yumi didn't care that much. She was desperate to know the truth. The moment he saw Yumi, Bobby panicked. Yumi questioned him why he had to lie. Bobby slowly walked towards Yumi. It was then that she realized the problem. It turned out Bobby had an accident on his business trip. He lied because he was afraid Yumi would worry. He had been in the hospital all week. After learning the truth, Yumi was both heartbroken and furious. How could he hide such a big matter from her? Yumi couldn't understand Bobby's actions. In fact, Bobby also wanted to tell her, but for some reason he couldn't bring himself to say it. At that moment, they both burst into tears. Bobby took her hand and hugged her tightly. He revealed all his longing and love. Bobby proposed to Yumi. Yumi was stunned by his sudden proposal. Many days later, Yumi still couldn't help but smile. Thinking of his proposal, she took a picture and posted it online. The illustrator, not knowing what had happened, still wanted to set Yumi and Koo-ung up. As long as Yumi wasn't married, Koo-ung still had a chance. But a second later he was slapped with reality. I heard Yumi is getting married. Koo-ung's heart sank upon hearing this. From the time Yumi and Bobby clarified things with each other, They seemed to have returned to a state of passionate love. Bobby even took Yumi to meet his father. The new daughter-in-law, meeting her future father-in-law for the first time, was nervous and didn't know what to do. Bobby's father wasn't good with words, which made sensitive Yumi afraid he didn't like her. After seeing Yumi heartily finish a plate of donuts, Bobby's father truly took a liking to this girl. Before she left, he gave her a stack of money. Perhaps because happiness came so unexpectedly, Yumi was very happy to receive the adult's approval. One day, Yumi and Bobby made plans to watch a movie together, but she suddenly developed a fever. Yumi went to the clinic alone to see a doctor and happened to receive a text message from Koo-eung. They were like two ordinary friends, talking about their current situations. Koo-eung mustered the courage to wish her well. Yumi felt joy from the bottom of her heart, but Koo-eung was in immense pain. He didn't hope for Yumi and Bobby to get married at all, but now he had no right to stop it. Although Koo-eung was unwilling, he still chose to give up. After returning home, she had a high fever. Bobby stayed by her side, never leaving to take care of her. He even cooked porridge for her himself. Bobby could be said to be the most perfect other half. Hearing Bobby's busy sounds in the kitchen, Yumi lay in bed, feeling both reassured and happy. But this happiness was quickly shattered by a phone call. Yumi discovered that Do-eun, who had confessed to Bobby before, was still calling him. Yumi's heart at that moment was like ashes, but she still acted as usual, showing nothing. Watching Bobby about to leave, Yumi's heart was as calm as water. She had carefully thought about breaking up with Bobby. Yumi took off their couple ring. This time she truly wanted to say goodbye to Bobby. Finally, she said they were breaking up, and Bobby, as if he had anticipated it, calmly accepted everything. Even until they parted, Yumi was still wearing that ring, while Bobby had taken his ring off. The 2-year relationship finally came to an end. Koo-eung had just gotten off the plane when he received a wedding invitation from his ex-girlfriend. His chest felt as if something was blocking it. Thinking of the groom being Bobby, he didn't even want to open the invitation. When passing by Yumi's apartment complex, he suddenly wanted to take a walk. The time he spent here was when he was at his poorest, but also his happiest. At that time, Yumi always stood by the window, waiting for him to get off work. Koo-eung suddenly saw workers moving a sofa out of Yumi's house. Had she moved to Bobby's house? Or to their new house? Or to their new house? Thinking of this, tears filled Koo-eung's eyes. He went into her house himself, looked at all the familiar things before him. Those sweet memories came back, but now she had become someone else's bride. Koo-eung's eyes reddened as he left, just as Yumi saw him. The moment she saw Yumi, his eyes seemed to light up again. Yumi asked Koo-eung if he had received the invitation. Koo-eung just silently nodded. The two exchanged a few words, then said goodbye. Before leaving, Koo-eung couldn't help but say he would wait for the day Yumi wore a wedding dress. Yumi, after hearing this, didn't understand anything. Foolish Koo-eung felt very strange. He immediately opened the invitation he hadn't dared to open, and the result left him wide-eyed. It turned out to be Yumi's colleague's wedding invitation. Koo-eung immediately told the driver to turn the car around. He asked, and only then learned that Yumi had just bought a new house and was moving. He didn't know she had broken up with Bobby. After hearing the news, hope was rekindled in him, and his mood significantly improved. After breaking up with Bobby, Yumi poured all her energy into writing. She quickly finished her novel. Unexpectedly, the day before her colleague's wedding, she lost her tablet, which contained the ending of the story. Yumi had searched her entire house, but still couldn't find the tablet. Yumi decided to attend the wedding first and deal with it later. Meanwhile, Bobby had already packed his luggage. The company was transferring him to Singapore, and today was the day he had to leave. On his way to the airport, he received a call from the cafe, saying his girlfriend had forgotten her tablet. Bobby quickly went to retrieve the tablet for Yumi. He intended to personally deliver it to her, but traffic was too heavy. He could only text Yumi. Receiving the message, Yumi finally felt relieved. To make his flight, Bobby had no choice but to put it in an airport locker. Looking at the happy couple on the aisle, Yumi's eyes reddened. The wedding ended, and Yumi rushed to the airport, coincidentally meeting Koo-eung outside. Knowing she had to get her tablet, he offered to drive her, but Yumi wanted to take a taxi. After arriving at the airport, Yumi opened the locker and found her lost tablet. She intended to say thanks to Bobby, but he must have already boarded the plane by now, so she just thanked him via text message. Then she saw Bobby read the message immediately. It turned out the flight was delayed. Perhaps fate also wanted them to meet again. They talked like old friends. Yumi asked if he had a new girlfriend yet. Bobby replied he was seeing someone. Yumi shyly wished him happiness, but Bobby wasn't actually seeing anyone. He hadn't even met the person his colleague introduced to him. Yumi returned to her single life and focused on her career. When she ran out of ideas, she would do housework. When she was tired, she would go to bed. When she finished submitting her manuscript, she suddenly received a new tablet. Earlier, Koo-eung heard that Yumi had lost her tablet, so he bought her a new one as a gift. But Yumi didn't, so he bought her a new one as a gift. But Yumi didn't like that, so she went to him to return it. While waiting, she saw a piece of paper on Ku-Eung's desk, with many accounts written on it. These accounts looked familiar. It turned out they often appeared in the comments section of Yumi's novel. Those encouraging words had given her great courage. At the same time, Ku-Eung also arrived. Seeing Ku-Eung's hasty and hurried appearance, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. That evening, Yumi went to a party at the publishing house. She had a lot of fun, but couldn't sleep when she got home. Yumi watched the first snow of the season outside, and wished for a new love to come. Our youth passes like a cup of tea, so let's try to cherish what we have. This concludes the Yumi's Cells drama. For those who want to know how the story ends, please leave your comments below. Thank you everyone.